Alrighty, welcome back, everybody. So we've got a start on our unit tests for the Adventure Park trigger coverage, and we ran into a little bit of a challenge last time when we tried to separate our test into two, so we had to roll back our changes. So now we've kind of gone as far as we need to. We have an idea that there's something to do with when a park is created, we create this supporting data, and the park can be activated or deactivated based on opening dates, and that can have an impact on these park of interest. So we have a little bit more clarity into the data model and into the automation that we should expect. So now we're going to shift gears and we're going to go into the trigger. And the way I like to refactor this is highly systematic, very, very systematic in how we're going to do our refactoring. And what I mean by that in this case is we're going to go level by level, step by step. We're not going to do too much immediately. And if I was to do this in a normal company, I might have different branches for each phase of the refactoring process. So you can almost think of it as like a refinement process where we get more and more knowledge, and we take little baby steps continually to improve the code quality. So let's see where we begin here. We're going to start at the trigger because that's our highest point, and we're going to start just making very normal step baby logical changes that must be true. So in the very beginning, we have this old school code comment here. You'll see these because before there was Salesforce DX, all the code lived on the Salesforce servers. So you couldn't have version control. And so when you don't have version control, well, version control is very important for developers. So you have to figure out a way to kind of make it happen. And that's where you get these kind of top level, class level code comment blocks. But we're not in the old dark ages anymore. We have version control. We can pull our metadata out of Salesforce. And this is completely useless. Because what I see most of the time is it's very well intentioned. You see someone's name and you see a change that it was created, but I doubt no one's ever edited this file. I'm sure it was edited because we can actually go down and we can see these code comments where there were additions. So this is where the version control can do a much better job at tracking our changes than these sort of kind of hacks of code comments. So we can just go ahead and get rid of this. We don't need to know this. It's offering, we can double check. We can see that, this is obvious. Like obviously the trigger is calling the handler and it was created. We don't really need to know that. So we'll delete that. We don't need to know this is after insert because we can literally read is insert, is after. No big deal. Now this is an interesting one. And this was made by someone named Tristan. And they did some change, we don't know what. But it was connected to something called TPP 6384. So maybe they had some sort of a Jira or some sort of a project management software for requirements. And this was the ID for a given requirement. We may or may not have access to that. If we do, and we still have access to it, it could be helpful. In this case, we're going to assume that we don't have access to it, and we don't really need it anyway. So we'll go ahead and delete that. And same thing here, and here, and here. And then again, we have something that has a little bit less information. We can see when it was made, but all it really tells us is that there's some sort of a life cycle project. So we may want to ask about that. We can jot down a note and talk about it. So sometimes even these little comments, they can kind of be helpful, but once they've played their role, we can do much better in the future. So we're going to not need this anymore, or this. And now we get to these two empty blocks. They were probably made as placeholders. You can keep them or delete them. My preference is to delete them. If you don't need it, this is extremely easy to type. So we'll remove it, and that way we focus our code a little bit more. Now the last thing we're going to do is just these little, it's like these little improvements. Like if you've heard of the broken window theory in policing, you know that just having a broken window that doesn't get repaired in a neighborhood is going to eventually cause more crime in that area. Because when you allow things to not be maintained and they're a little bit dirty, then people don't care as much, and they'll have another window get broken, or they won't repair this, and then it kind of escalates and devolves into the state where that area becomes less and less safe. I think of it kind of like a car. Like if you go into your friend's car and there's trash everywhere and you have your McDonald's bag, you probably won't care about throwing it on the floor because they seem to not care. But if you go into your friend's car that's a very clean car, you won't even put a paper straw on the floor without feeling bad. So we want to have that kind of high code quality so that people look at our code and they respect how good it is and they're not going to pollute it. So how can we do that? There's a couple easy changes. The first thing with formatting, we can see that there's just these really trivial little changes. So in most IDEs, you can have a way to reformat it. So in WebStorm, I can do a command to reformat this, and I'll run it, make small changes. We can also inspect our code, right-clicking, going down to, or do I go through here? Code, inspect code. We'll analyze it. I think, there we go. And we can see some of the small violations. Like none of these things are big, but they are easy to change. And these easy changes matter. So we can see that these are uses does not match our declaration. So we want like triggers to be capitalized. We want the conventions to be followed. It's important. If you have a convention, you should follow that convention. So what we can do is we can click change usages to Mac declaration form. And then in a few seconds, we've cleaned that code up a little bit more. Looks a little bit better. We'll go ahead and deploy it and we'll be very safe. And every time we make these changes, we'll go ahead and run our test again just to make sure we didn't break anything or do something stupid, because it's very easy to accidentally delete something you're not supposed to delete or make a change you don't intend to make. So tests keep us safe. And there we go. We passed. We're good. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and come in and commit this. So I want to change this window because it's kind of hard to read with my face being in the way. So we'll just do this. Go away. There we go. All right. So like I was saying last time, some of these changes, like what do you say about this? Like this is, we're just like cleaning up the code. Cleaning up comments, formatting, and conventions. You'll repeat these things over and over again, so you don't have to struggle too much or stress yourself out with having a beautiful name. Just make it accurate on what you're doing. All right. So now our trigger's looking good. We have our two dependencies, our park trigger handler and our service appointment handler. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. So we're going to look at this and we're going to go ahead and reformat it. Makes those changes. And now another thing I'm going to like to do is these are also easy wins. Like there's a lot of easy wins we can do in our first level of refinement that are not risky at all, but they have an impact in terms of readability of the code. We're improving the readability, and when we improve the readability, we're improving the understandability of the code. And so we can do that step by step. So one thing I'm going to look for here is what I would call a right margin violation. So as I scroll down, I can see that I come across this part of the code that runs off the screen. And in my mind, that's what I would call a right margin violation, because I can't just take a look at this and figure out what it's doing. I'd have to move over a little bit. And this one's not too bad, but they can be bad. So what will I do? We'll just go ahead and separate these out so that they're easier to read. And when you do that, you kind of end up finding opportunities to make the code a little bit clearer. For example, this is double wrapped in parentheses. Why? Who knows, right? Someone might have just fat fingered it, but we don't need it. And that small little change builds up. And that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to make a lot of small little changes that will build up over time. And that looks pretty good. So last thing we'll do is we'll analyze our code, inspect, analyze. I think I have a squirrel in my fireplace. All right, see what our warning is. We have an unused declaration. Now this one you have to be careful with. Unused declarations can be dangerous because sometimes you can do an operation and you have a variable that you're not doing anything with. But if you blindly remove unused declarations from your code, you may remove things that you actually need, and then your code will break. So I'm very careful when it comes to unused declarations. We'll go ahead and look at what this is saying. And in this case, it's a parameter. So this is going to be a way we're going to simplify our code. We won't automatically do this, but we will come into the code and we can look at where this is used. And we can see it's used in two places in our trigger. We can make this change now or we can make it later. Let's go ahead and make it now, and we'll remove this declaration, and then the triggers won't be happy, so they'll be red, but we know we don't need this middle portion. And we'll save that. We'll run it. Another way I like to think about cleaning up code, it's like, if your kitchen is full of dirty dishes in the sink and the counters are a mess and you have food laying out, you have to just do one thing at a time. You do one little step at a time to clean it up, and every little thing contributes to eventually having a clean kitchen. So you'll see it's pretty magical, actually, some of the changes we can make and the improvements we can make into our code quality by doing very simple things. There we go. So that passed, no problems. So in this case, we're going to clean up conventions and remove unused parameter. Commit that. Look at our helper. So we'll just scroll through and we'll look for any right margin violations. We find one, so we'll make this a little bit better. There we go. And then we will inspect our code. And then you'll also see these misspellings or these typos or whatever. I don't know if you all saw it, but in the trigger itself, there was a now park instead of a new park. So you'll see these things, and we'll have opportunities to clean those things up in the future. All right, so we have one warning here. We have another unused declaration. So we can see let's go ahead and take a look at that. And again, it's a parameter that's not being used. So let's go ahead and take a look. You can see on before update, old map, we're not using it, so let's lose it. If we need it in the future, it's extremely easy to use or to add back. Go. Passed. Good. Resolve right margin violation. Did we, let me see. I don't think I did this yet. Let's go ahead and reformat this just in case. Okay. And last one we're going to do in this, this stage is we're going to do the same thing on our helper. So you can see these are all the same kinds of changes. And so we're just doing them on all the dependencies that are related because they're basically all the same thing. And in this case, it's very simple. So let's just go ahead and check. Nothing there. We'll analyze. I don't think it'll find anything. You'll see, this is analyzing it, especially for code, the conventions on capitalization and things, can save you a lot of time when you have a really big class file. We didn't find anything, so we're looking good. So that's the first step. And so now we can begin, our next step is going to begin to understand what happens in these major handler classes. So we can begin to make our code a higher and higher quality. All right. So hopefully you've been able to follow that. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.